Alright, so hey everyone. Today I want to do an updated Resident Evil 8 example. This is the full retail release. Unsurprisingly, this version has the exact same dead zones that I showed in the demo version. So here, it's about a 31% rounded square dead zone. So as you can see, I have to move the stick quite far before you see camera movement occur, and I have to move further in diagonally because of the shape. There's quite a bit of restricted diagonal movement around the axes, so as you can see, I can make these dramatic bobbing motions, and the cursor is moving perfectly left, and I can move or point at very obvious angles, and the camera will still move perfectly left. Of course, same with right. It's very obvious when looking straight up or down. You don't see diagonal movement occur until you break out into these green regions. Now the issue with that is that makes most of your diagonal movement wrong, because you can point in a direction and not see that direction, and can make aiming feel quite a bit more clunky because much of your stick is only outputting 4 directions. Movement is exactly the same. It's a little difficult to show the angles, but they're the same as well. The only thing specific for the movement dead zone is the shaded region, which represents the sprint threshold. So your stick has to be within the shaded region to be allowed to start sprinting, and if you fall under this while you're sprinting, you stop sprinting. Simple as that. It has been brought to my attention that the PS5 as well as the PC versions of Resident Evil 8 seem to use circular dead zones. There are cases where games will use different dead zone sizes and shapes and on different platforms, and that could be the case here, where the current gen versions, the PS5 and probably the Xbox Series as well as PC, use circular dead zones, and the previous gen versions, the Xbox One, which I'm demonstrating here, and PS4 use these rounded square dead zones. If that is the case, the previous gen versions really need to be updated to have circular dead zones. There's no reason to have these versions kind of limited like this. Circular dead zones with full diagonal movement are simply much better than what I've just demonstrated. You're able to exit the dead zone consistently, and you have full and correct diagonal movement with a standard circular dead zone. That's something I want to demonstrate now with an Antideadzone demonstration. I'm not going to show the output in this. If anyone's interested in seeing how that works, basically the output skips over the dead zone and the restricted diagonal movement into these green regions, and I set up a circular dead zone through a script. And that's just going to demonstrate what it looks like if this was changed to a circular dead zone. So changing the graphs and running that, you can now see that dead zone's the same size, but movement now occurs once breaking out of the circle, so you don't have to move the stick as far diagonally before seeing movement. And you see that there is full diagonal movement now. Again, this is just an anti-deadzone demonstration. This is just skipping over the game's restricted diagonal movement. But you can see now that subtle diagonals are being applied. And it's a little more difficult to see horizontally, but if I make these same bobbing motions, that is being picked up in game, and if I point at the same angles I was before, you can see that those are actually being applied. If the PS5 and PC versions are using circular dead zones, this is exactly how it works there. This is how Resident Evil 2 Remake worked, and this is quite a bit of an improvement over the rounded square dead zones that at least the Xbox One version currently, the rounded squares that it uses. So this should definitely be changed to match those versions. I had also requested dead zone options. As you can see, I can make quite a bit of stick movement without anything occurring in game. Large dead zones are good to avoid unwanted cursor drift, but they can make the controls feel less responsive and make precise adjustments more difficult, whereas lower dead zones do the opposite. And being able to lower the dead zone would greatly improve the feel of this game. So to demonstrate that too, we'll change the graph again and update that. Alright, so now I've changed dead zone to 5%, and now you can see that once I break out of this smaller dead zone, you see cursor movement occurring. And you can see that same movements, or much smaller movements that I were making before, are actually being applied now. So this makes aiming quite a bit easier and just more responsive in general because of that. The last thing I had requested was an option for the acceleration curve. I had requested the option to be a degree of a power function, but I've tested the game's curve, Resident Evil 8's curve, and I'll show that on screen. An example of with the dead zone and just focusing on the curve, and I'll demonstrate it now. Basically, the curve starts pretty slow and then ramps up pretty smoothly, but after about 90% steeps up dramatically until it caps. You can see this point right here is that pretty steep increase. Now this curve is good for low-end precision because you can make quite large stick movements and only make small in-game movements, and that's good if you want to make really small adjustments or lining up shots. The problem is this can be overly slow for some players, especially players playing on lower sensitivities, where the acceleration curve already starts extremely slow and most of the stick is slow. So because of this curve, you have to move 90% of the way before you see pretty much 50% of your speed. So most of your stick is going to have really slow movements, which just can feel too sluggish. I want to demonstrate like how the curve would change following a power function, or I can't demonstrate a power function because the game's curve is kind of unique, but you will see that you can see the circles that I'm making right now and the size that the crosshairs, or the circles that the crosshair is making. Just pay attention to both the stick movements and that. And I'll demonstrate an extreme example where I counter this game's curve to try to demonstrate what altering it would look like. So making those same movements, you can see that these circles are quite a bit bigger. Even the smallest movements I can kind of make are still bigger than what the default curve was having you do. Of course, this might be overly sensitive for a lot of players. This is actually, I think, well above a a linear curve equivalent starting speed. But this is what the options would basically give you, is you being able to choose the curve you use. Because if we could use the default, this default can stay the way it is, but having either some presets or offer an optional power function with an exponent on there. But the presets could be like, linear, quadratic, or something in between, like an exponent of 1.5 or something. And something like a quadratic starts just as slow as the current curve, but because of the way it builds up compared to this curve, you have easier access to middle speeds. So you're not really stuck with 90% of your stick movement being under 50% of your speed. It's kind of distributed a little more evenly than that, while still starting very slow. And that's the kind of customization that would really help players find something that's really comfortable for them. But again, I'm going to make these circles right here. You can see about 20% circles. And switching it back to normal. See, those same movements are now much smaller. This is the default curve. So to summarize everything, a change to a circular dead zone, this should happen regardless, or if nothing else gets fixed, this definitely just needs to be changed to a circle to match the like next gen or the current gen and PC versions. But also add a dead zone option. If they want to keep the same options they're using, 0 through 9, that'd be fine. They could just have like 3% increments for the dead zone. So this could range from say 3% dead zone to 30%, and in 10% increments. That would be perfectly fine. Having an acceleration curve options, they could follow this as well, just have 10 increments like this, or they could do what the camera acceleration options are, just have some presets where one could be default, which is this default game curve, a linear curve, like a middle exponent like 1.5, or a quadratic curve. And that would give plenty of acceleration or options for players to find something that really suits what's comfortable for them. So that about covers it. Hopefully Capcom, you can see this, and we can get some of these options added at some point in this game's life. I'd imagine there's some DLC that'll come out later on, so there should be still some support for this game to see that happen. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and have a good rest of your day.